Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we have something really unique for you. We actually spotted G2 Jankos facing none other than his old rival Broxa in solo queue. What impressed us so much about his performance in this game was his ability to read the map. And that's probably a term you've heard before, reading the map, but what does it mean? Well, that's exactly what we're going to be breaking down for you today. And don't worry, this isn't some high-level concept you'll never be able to execute. What you'll find is that reading the map is really about executing a few different simple, fundamental concepts and putting them together to create something bigger than the sum of their parts. Alright, enough hype, let's jump straight into it with Jankos playing Jarvan against Broxa playing Elise. Now, when it comes to reading the map, you can do this as soon as the game starts. This is because when it boils down to it, all reading the map really means is knowing what you should be doing as a jungler and predicting what the enemy jungler is looking to do. Let me explain. So the first thing all junglers need to do when a game starts is decide which buff they're starting at. Typically, you start on the opposite side that you want to gank. So let's analyze our side lanes and decide where we should be starting. In top lane, we have Ryze against Gangplank. Both are relatively safe laners that are looking to scale. Ryze is ranged and has escapability from the movement speed from his passive. Additionally, Gangplank often just spams his Q from range. He doesn't have the greatest gap close or crowd control to engage on Ryze, and his W acts as a cleanse, removing CC and healing him. So we can start to see how this matchup isn't exactly volatile or in need of our attention. Now, when we look at bot lane, we can see we have Yasuo Braum against Misfortune Nautilus. Okay, your jungle sense should be tingling. First, the enemy Misfortune and Nautilus both lack escape abilities, which is a huge red flag and indicates they have high gank potential for us. At the same time, Yasuo has great mobility and engage with his E ability, while Braum offers crowd control with his passive and Q. This is how we know we need to be pathing towards the bottom side of the map. With that in mind, I want you to tell me which buff should Jarvan be starting at, his red or his blue? The answer is his red. We always start on the opposite side that we want to gank, since we can path towards that side of the map. Great, so when it comes to reading the map, we've done the first step. We've identified what we're looking to accomplish. However, we still need to answer what the enemy jungler is looking to do, so how do we do this? Well, we can apply the exact same process we just used on ourselves, but to the enemy jungler instead. As you start at your red, you'll want to watch the side lanes. Notice how the enemy bot lane shows early, while top is missing. This indicates that the enemy Elise is getting a leash at her blue. Well, we know that you want to start on the opposite side that you want to gank, right? So this means since the enemy Elise is starting at her blue, she'll be pathing towards the bottom side of the map, looking to gank bot. Awesome, so it's as simple as that. You've now taken your first steps to reading the map. We now know there is going to be early action on the bottom side of the map, where both junglers will be looking to influence that lane. But what are we supposed to do with this information? Well, as a general rule, when both junglers start on the same side of the map, it means that you're often in a rush to the other side. This is because the jungler who can gank that lane first often then secures priority for their laners, which can then be used to secure the nearby scuttle and in general take control of that side of the map. So there's definite value in being the fastest to that side of the map. And Jankos is going to adjust his route based on how he's reading the map. He takes his red, but then immediately heads to his blue, into his Gromp. This is the fastest way for him to hit level 3 while also being on the bottom side of the map. And what do we see? A predictable fight breakout bot lane in that volatile matchup, and Jankos is in a perfect position to gank. In the end, his bot lane doesn't need his help, but that's not the point. The point is, if things did go wrong, he was in position to turn it around, all due to reading the map correctly. I want to take a moment and compare this to the route that Broxa took. As we mentioned, he starts at his blue, then does his Gromp, but instead of rushing straight to his red to hit level 3 and be on the bottom side of the map as fast as possible, he takes his wolves. This choice prevents him from being bot at the same time as Jankos. We can actually see that when the fight breaks out bot side, Broxa is actually still on the top side of the map. This means, regardless of whether his bot lane won or lost the fight, it didn't matter. He pathed too slow, and Jarvan would have been in position to win the fight for his team. Great, so Jarvan is on the bottom side of the map, but his bot lane won the fight, and now he has to decide what to do next. Well, with his bot lane recalling, he definitely doesn't need to be bot side for a little while. The only nearby lane he can influence at the moment would be mid, but when we take a look at it, we can see Lucian is pushing Renekton in, so not exactly a great gank for us. However, remember what we said earlier. Reading the map is also about predicting what the enemy jungler will be looking to do. Jarvan knows that the enemy Elise started blue and pathed towards the bot side. By this point in the game, Elise will have cleared 3 camps and be level 3, giving her access to her cocoon, which is what enables her strong ganks. So looking at the map, I want you to put yourself in Elise's shoes, and tell me, what would you be looking to do? Well, bot lane is recalling, so there's nothing for us there, only leaving us with the nearby mid, where Lucian is overextended. That's a great gank opportunity for us as Elise. So if we jump back to Jarvan, we can now see how we've correctly read the map. We know for the next short period of time, mid lane will be the point of contention. That being said, let's say you just headed straight to mid as Jarvan and waited there to counter gank Elise. One problem is that you're not farming, so if Elise never ganks, you start falling behind. So yes, waiting nearby to counter gank is an option, but here we see a more efficient choice by Jankos. He heads to his wolves. The idea here is that yes, he's farming camps, keeping up in golden experience, but most importantly is that he's farming a camp that's nearby the lane that's most likely to be ganked. This means that inevitably once Elise ganks mid, Jarvan is in position to counter gank while not giving up farm in the process. And it's after Jarvan reacts to the gank mid do we find ourselves in an absolutely crucial moment of decision making. So how do you decide what you should do next as Jarvan? Well, we start with simple fundamentals. Remember, we identified that bot lane was the key matchup we wanted to influence early. It was volatile and had great gank potential. Well, in that early fight, guess what? A ton of summoner spells were used by the enemy. Nautilus used Ignite and Flash, and Misfortune used Heal. So the key lane we want to gank has summoner spells on cooldown. When we jump back to our current position, when we look bot, we can see that they're pushed up and overextended. Great, so our next choice is simple. Head to gank the overextended bot with no summoner spells. Remember though, identifying what we want to accomplish is only one step of reading the map. We have to think of what the enemy jungler will be looking to do as well. After Elise ganked mid, notice how she headed to the top side of the map. Okay, well, what is she trying to accomplish? The topside skeleton is about to spawn, so she could be looking to take that. Our raptors and krugs are still alive, so she could be looking to invade those. And when we look top, we can see a big wave is about to crash into Ryze's tower, which definitely could set up a dive for Elise. Now we suddenly see a problem with ganking bot. If we do this, we could possibly be leaving our top laner to be dove, while also letting Elise steal our topside camps. Here's the thing, that's actually okay, because while she's snowballing top, we'll be looking to snowball bot, which we already identified as being the more important matchup. So Jankos heads bot side, looking to gank, and consciously giving up control of the top side of the map. But suddenly, we see the enemy bot back off and play safe, putting an end to our plans. This isn't a problem though, since Jankos went through the process needed to read the map, he now knows he's not going to get anything out of the bot side and immediately heads back top to try and prevent the possible dive on Ryze and having his camp stolen. In the process, he makes a great mechanical play. He uses Jarvan's EQ combo right as Elise cocoons. This is because Elise's cocoon can't stop Jarvan's EQ combo once it's casted. This allows Jarvan to absorb the stun while still escaping and applying a knockup of his own and saving his life. Immediately after, we then actually see his Lucian get a solo kill on the enemy Renekton, but most importantly is how he stays after to help Lucian shove out the lane. Remember, Elise just finished stealing his raptors and will be near mid lane. His Lucian is low on health, has no summoner spells or mana. If Lucian tries to push out the lane by himself, Elise will simply gank and kill him. So Jarvan does them both a favor by helping him push out the lane, keeping Lucian safe, denying the enemy Renekton minions to the tower, and soaking minions for himself in the process. Now, some of you are probably thinking, okay, Jankos just got really lucky that Lucian got a solo kill on Renekton. But what if I told you this was actually mainly Brox's fault? Jarvan is close by, ready to gank him. On top of this, Lucian just teleported in back to full health and mana, and now has an item advantage in the form of a second Doran's Blade. As a melee champ, Renekton is struggling really hard to push out this wave to reset it. Renekton even helps Elise and reacts to the fight at the Raptor camp, but while doing so, Lucian actually pulls the wave to maintain the freeze. And this is why shortly after, Renekton is in a terrible position, pushed up the wave, low in health, and with an item disadvantage. So what should have Brox done on Elise to prevent this? Well, it's actually quite simple. After Elise ganks mid, she needs to stay with Renekton and help shove the wave in. This will reset the wave, and also free up Renekton to help move with her to either dive top or steal the enemy's raptors. By leaving immediately, Renekton is left to try and push the wave out on his own against a full health Jarvan, which then results in Lucian teleporting in and getting a devastating freeze on Renekton. Alright, we went over a lot, so let's quickly recap. You first learned two principles to reading the map: identify your game plan and the enemy jungler's game plan. Through lane analysis, we knew that bot lane was the key matchup to influence. We started red to path towards that lane early. We then scouted the enemy Elise was starting out of blue and also looking to path towards that matchup. That's how Jarvan knew to prioritize taking the fastest route possible to the bot side, allowing him to influence the matchup first before Elise. Shortly after, Jarvan had no ganks bot or mid. However, by analyzing what ganks the enemy jungler has, we could predict that Elise would likely look to gank our pushed up mid laner. You then learned a nice trick. Instead of just waiting near the lane to counter gank, you can farm a nearby camp to be more efficient while still being in position to react to the enemy jungler's gank. After this, we knew our goal was still to gank the enemy bot, as it was a key matchup and they used their summoner spells and were pushed up. However, we took things a step further. Identifying that Elise headed to the top side of the map, we analyzed what she could accomplish there. This let us read the map correctly and know that while we ganked bot, Elise would likely dive top and steal our camps. As soon as the gank bot wasn't going to work, we quickly moved back to the top side of the map to try and shut down Elise's game plan. In the process, you learned how important helping laners to shove out minion waves can be. By Elise not shoving out a wave after she ganked, she left Renekton in a terrible position pushed up the lane. At the same time, we saw Jarvan help Lucian push up the lane after a solo kill, since with no summoner spells, low health, and no mana, he definitely would have been killed by Elise if he tried to push it out on his own. Alright, that's going to do it for this video. We hope you guys enjoyed it and learned a lot. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below, and as always, good luck and have fun on Summoner's Rift.